windshields under his garage door, and like he's really desperate to get rid of them.
Right.
I haven't even started.
You knew this until we get going. I didn't tell you, but I'm meeting but that's okay. I mean, we invited everybody, but we should start.
They're not doing so hot. I looked at a
These are the
couple.
required attendees.
I actually,
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah.
The rest are optional until
The
8.
audit committee, so.
Oh, okay.
Ivy League university do like stock trading. So I cashed out one account I had with like 40 grand, and I've got it in cash. We're waiting.
Audit time is always
waiting to
so
strike
fun.
on it, buying a few stocks.
Thinking back.
Tough because it's so compressed.
That's
I might
actually,
delay paying my taxes
No,
this year.
I don't know.
Because I have a decent pay.
there you go.
Yeah, this could be.
That's, it's always been a good time. Before I came to the county, into the town, I was the CFO at a nursing home.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I
So-
think we talked about that once, yeah.
So, this time of year always was terrible.
You guys ready?
Sure.
All right, well, again, some of the board members may come, there'll definitely be some starting to come in at 10 or 5 to 8, but they were all told they were invited to come, so otherwise the audit committee is here, so we'll turn things over to Mary from Loans and McCormick. Appreciate you coming out in person early in the morning like this, but
No problem at all. John Chavone would have joined me, but he said the commute was a little too long for him.
Exactly. Terrible.
He couldn't really make it here in time.
Right.
So,
One of us.
I know, right? So I'll start by talking about the financial statements, which are in the blue bound package there. So what we're delivering to you today and what has been finalized is our unmodified opinion on the independent auditor's report. That is a clean opinion. It's the highest standard that you can achieve in the audit world. So it's what we had expected and hoped for when we started the audit and what was achieved. The audit is also conducted under government auditing standards because of your status as an IDA, and then there is also the New York State Public Authorities Law Report, which is at the end of this package, again, because of your status as a public authority. Taking a look at page 3 of the financial statements, the balance sheet. So you've got your cash, about $1.7 million. That's about 64% of your total assets. And then the other big part of your assets is your property available for sale. On note 3 on the financial statements, which is on page 7, you'll see available for sale and then development property is the breakdown of those, of that $948,000. Just some of the names on that, General Motors, Miller, Ruhlman, are some of those properties that you have.
we didn't talk about before, the property that's referenced again under development is the Ruhlman Road one. We don't actively market that at this point, so, and I think at some point, I could see that change, but that's an accurate reflection at this point. But just so you all know, that's the Ruhlman Road piece that's associated with the debt and so on.
So you can see from this asset section of the balance sheets, very strong. You've got, 64% of your assets is cash, $1.7 million, and then you've got your property. So strong asset section of the balance sheet that went up about 27% from last year. And then looking at your liabilities, current portion of long-term debt is the loan that you have with the town of Lockport. 2020 is your last payment on that loan, so that'll go away in the next year's financial statements. Accounts payable is just things you owed at the end of the year that hadn't been paid yet. It's just really timing of payments. And then accrued liabilities. This is further disclosed in Note 6. That has to do with the GM lawsuit. Decision was made with management last year to accrue that in the event of having to pay something out on that lawsuit. And then the remainder is, so you can see your liabilities are much lower than your assets, and then the remainder is your unrestricted net position. Taking a look at the income statement and where you ended up revenue and expense-wise, administration, application, and other fees, about $600,000. Most of that is the fee from Yahoo. They're a big player, obviously, for you, and that was where $520,000 of that $600,000 came from them. Then you also had Custom Laser and Waterhouse. that made up the remainder. And then the other big number there is the gain on the sale of land. So you did sell some land, and so the cost, the initial cost of that land, the sale of the land, net the initial cost, and some fees ends up being the gain on the sale, which brings you up to total operating revenues of just under $700,000. As you can see, and as I'm sure you know, being involved in the organization, these revenues ebb and flow year to year depending on your agreements. So, you're going to see years where, like 2018, where there isn't a lot of fees versus then, 2019 when there are. Looking at your operating expenses, in 2018, a couple things that increased your expenses that year: the $250,000 that is on the balance sheet, the accrual for the possible GM lawsuit, and then also an increase in legal and professional fees in 2008 due to that. So that really jacked up your total operating expenses in 2018. 2019, a much more normal year of expenses. Legal and professional, there wasn't really as much activity there with the GM lawsuit in 19 versus 18, and then just, normal things like dues and membership and travel, brings you down to operating expenses just over $100,000, which brings you to a total operating income of $588,000, plus some interest, just under $600,000 net, and that increases your net position to about $2.4 million. So very good year this year, and a strong net income and operating income. Taking a look at the financial statement notes, the more important notes in the financial statements that you'd probably want to pay attention to is Note 1, which just talks about your tax incentives and, basically how the IDAs work, and, the focus of the IDA and the property for sale. And then also, I would say Note 6 on the litigation, which is on page 7, would be another important footnote if you were looking to zero in on the more important ones in the financial statements. You do have details here of the property for sale, and then also the long-term debt showing that that's going to be paid off in 2020. And then looking at page 8 is the opinion on the government auditing standards. As I mentioned, we are required to use government auditing standards when we're conducting the audit. So there's the opinion there with no issues. And then the last page is the report for the compliance with New York State Public Authorities law. And again, no issues there. Before I go on to the other letters, does anybody have any questions about any of the numbers or the financial statement notes? It's a pretty straightforward year, I would say.
Good year.
Yeah, and a good year, too.
Highlights just how bad 2018 was.
When you look at them side by side,
Yeah.
Well,
that was that GM thing.
if we didn't do any projects in 2020, this won't carry the day, but just a reminder that the Yahoo project payments extended over 5 years, so it's nowhere near what we saw in 19, but I think it's like 50 or 54K a year for the next 4 years, so there will be those fees flowing through, which reminds me I'll have to at some point, I'm sure. Hey, do you plan on paying us that 54K? But, so that'll mitigate things if it's a non-project year, but we'll see.
Then just the other two reports that I have, one is the communication with those charged with governance. This is a required report that we provide to the board and to the audit committee. Just summarizes certain things about the financial statements and the audit process. If there's been any significant audit findings, we talk about the estimates. There's estimates associated with all financial statements, so we talk about that. We point out the footnote disclosures that I had mentioned that are a little bit more important than some of the other ones. If we had any difficulties performing the audit, or we had any issues with any journal entries or changes, we would discuss them here, but we did not have any of those issues. So it's a pretty standard letter, just pointing out some of the more important information associated with financial statements. And then the management letter is just our recommendations to the board and to the audit committee of any, changes or any things that, we may have found that, we wanted to let you know about. And just the one that we have is just continuing with the board oversight over the financial processes at the IDA. You have one person who has a lot of responsibility, that's, Kate, so making sure that people are reviewing bank statements and looking at purchases and things like that, just to make sure that everything, because there's limited segregation of duties, checks and balances, perfect. So, yes, so just some of the, basically continue to do what you're doing. Reminder.
Especially for me, we don't have very many bills this month, but Bob's, the treasurer's packet's still fairly extensive because, as much as he approved things last month, I didn't have him sign that important box on the voucher, so he'll be signing that today for last month, and then moving forward, make sure that he's made note of his review. But Kate's really good about even holding us accountable to holding her accountable, so it works good.
So, yeah, those are the two other reports that we're providing, and that's basically the presentation, unless somebody has any questions.
Great news. It only took 10 minutes, I mean, rock star.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Just in terms of the signature nature of the documents. From my business experience, aren't they usually signed off by one of the managing partners? This is like a generic Lumsden McCormick LLP.
Yeah, we use a standard Lumsden McCormick signature for all of our financial statements and these other two reports. You would see, for instance, John Chavon's signature on, let's say, the management letter. I mean, not the management letter, the engagement letter, or something along those lines. But for our audit reports, it is a generic firm signature that we use.
My other question, which, and I'm just used to it again more from the nonprofit world, was there seemed to have been in the last 2-3 years a slew of accounting changes and financial statement presentation changes. I'm just curious, in the kind of government municipality world, is there just any of that on the horizon or on the radar?
There are some. The Government Accounting Standards Board has been busy, and they have issued some new GASBs, some of which just do not apply to you because of the nature of the type of organization you are. You're considered a government, but you're also a business activity. You don't have, for instance, the town of Lockport has funds, general fund, highway fund. You don't have any of those types of things. One of the newer ones that's being implemented this year that we'll be working with the town on has to do with fiduciary activities, things that they've had in trust that they're holding for third parties. You don't have any of that kind of situation. There is some on the FASB side and the GASB side, some things coming down the line about leases and revenue recognition, but those won't be necessarily applicable to you. So dodged a bullet there, maybe. But you're right about the not-for-profits. There's been a lot over the past year or so.
All right, great. Thank you.
Any other questions from Mary? Oh, good. Well, just so you all, then maybe one of you can make the motion. Obviously, the board's being provided with their copies today, but in new business, we will want their approval of the 2019 audit, just so we're good from the Paris report perspective. So, Good.
Wonderful.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. And I will leave these, those are
Great.
extras.
total checking account 104,252 and savings account 1,616,111. We transferred $7,500 last month to pay from savings to checking to pay bills. The disbursements last month, Town of Lockport, Tom for expenses, Lumsden and McCormick for the audit, Central Design Group, that was computer work, Design Group was website, and the computer services. So that's the statement of cash transactions. Going to the income statement, obviously the interest is repeated there, with the year-to-date of $23.84. The details of the expenses are shown there, and administration, management fee, the auditing, the meeting expense, and the advertising and promotion. Again, the total year-to-date, negative $20,918. And then on the balance sheet, checking and savings are repeated there. Total assets is $26,62,559, with the accrued liability and the bonds payable showing there for the total, again, checking out at $26,62,559. So that's the numbers for the month. We also have 2 checks, only 2 actually, need to be paid in March. The monthly
I'm gonna get a
contract.
motion real quick on the financials.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Motion, I can be first, right? I can.
No, we usually have you be first on the bills.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
somebody else handle this.
A motion for the financial statements
I'll make that motion.
by Darlene, second
I'll second.
by Janine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now the bills. Town of Lockport with the monthly contract and credit card charges, and then Tom, February mileage. So I'd like to move that we approve those bills to pay for the month of March.
So I'll second it.
All right, motion by Bob, second by Harry. All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Second thing, met with the Evans Bank representative, Mark. It was a very good meeting. Learned a lot about the requirements on municipal organizations, where they can put their money, how the money is managed, how the bank handles it, and what we can and can't do from a who we work with standpoint based on the laws of New York State. Bottom line is, after having reviewed all that and understanding the situation with where our money can go, Sally did a good job 2 years ago in terms of where it is and what we're getting for our money and how it's invested. So anybody who wants any details, I can talk to afterwards, but I think we're in pretty good shape from that standpoint.
I'm sure we won't be.
And Tom was in the meeting as well.
But, yeah.
So it's not an easy thing to break it up and put it into different accounts and...
You can do that,
Mhm.
but there's no benefit at this point,
Okay.
because breaking it up puts restrictions on the amount of flexibility you have with the money, and the way they calculate their fees is based on the amount of money you have in your savings. And as of right now, we are, based on the way they do their math, the costs for managing our accounts are slightly more than the benefit they're getting from the use of the money, and they're waiving it every month.
Okay.
I mean, it's like $30 or $40. It isn't
Mhm.
a huge amount of money, but they're waiving it because it's that low and they want to be good partners, et cetera, et cetera. So if you break it up, then you have to start paying those fees for them managing your money separately, which then eats into the money you're earning.
Potentially
So
earning.
when you do the math, it's about a wash.
Okay.
So that's
Got it.
all the details are in here, but.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. All right, director's report?
So I had in the packet my administrative director's report. Let me just try and pick out some of the highlights. You all have in your packet at your table kind of a glossy copy, if I can use that phrase, of the new IDA park map. Obviously, the 2 posters that we have here have also been updated. Not a funny story, but some of you may say, well, I've got this already. Well, this is version 2 of our updated map, because when it came out, I thought, well, this is great, perfect, we finally have it. that was subsequently in the park, and if you look at the section up by Custom Laser, version 1 showed like the 1.47 acre piece of property still available for sale, and it was out there, I'm like, they're right up against the property line, it's a little water ditch, what happened here, and that was just a mistake of theirs. I mean, the quantity of acreage that sold included that property, and Wendell had just made that mistake. So the only change in version 2 is that Custom Laser is much more accurately represented in terms of the total amount of land, but also its positioning on that land. But it'll be helpful to have now. I mean, now we can move forward with, we'll put it up on the website. We obviously, at some point this year, will revise our IDA Park brochure, which this would be a key part of, and so on. So be helpful. Let's see, what else would Sarah, both on her own kind of intuition and computer skills, but also through a training session we had with Web Essentials, has begun to update the website. You all saw the stuff she'd done on the Board of Directors page and so on, because a number of aspects of Paris have a URL connection link. She's begun, I think maybe she's done even, uploading all the documents that we'll need to have a URL address from our website to put into the Paris report. So she is much more comfortable with it than I am, and seems to be able to move around it relatively with ease and make the updates. So what else would I highlight? You can see most of those introductory meetings. I'm just trying to get a sense of and be attuned to the resources that are out there that we would potentially share with our induced and tenant partners, whether that's manufacturing consulting, whether it's workforce development, or whether it's, power for jobs kind of projects. So we're slowly building that kind of knowledge base. The one thing I would mention with Invest Buffalo is they have a fairly robust property listing service that the only way we were on it was it listed the whole park, like literally a 130-acre park and so on. So once I was trained on the system, I've gone out and taken pictures of our 7 parcels. I'm not listing the one that has the huge, nice big easement over it at this point. But they're now up and listed with information and pictures on the Invest Buffalo, and coincidentally, that's also tied to the Niagara County IDA website. So hopefully, site selectors and commercial realtors will be continuing to use it. But notable that we obviously had to file that ST-62 form. That's been done. The other thing I'd mention here is, under my report, is that last piece about extensive survey on the IDA Park for new market studies. I think I've begun to send you some materials about a significant degree of concern that in really the 7 counties of western New York, but I would say even more isolated in Erie, Niagara County, that the available land and buildings for light industrial and even warehousing is perhaps at an all-time low. I went to this CBRE Realtors story, and I think I maybe shared the market view with you all, but that showed like a 2.6 vacancy or availability factor. Supposedly it's even lower than that. In light of that, probably starting 3-4 months ago, Invest Buffalo Niagara had commissioned a study with this new market consulting firm that happens to be, it must have a whole consulting arm, but they also happen to be the United States' largest site selector. So they went to the various county entities and said, we're looking for kind of best practices and places that are substantive enough and active enough that we can kind of do our studies. And to our credit, Niagara County IDA, or Economic Development, for Niagara County recommended our park. So some 20 hours later, probably, I finished the survey. The biggest challenge on it was it needed for every property in the park. How much is it assessed for? How big is it? When was it bought? Has it any renovations? Does it have a crane? Are the loading docks at a dock or a drive level? Probably 10 other scenarios, which again, at the early stages, I don't mind doing that because it's all educational for me. What I didn't like about it was 2 huge Excel spreadsheets, which I'm not super adept at, but nonetheless, we're through it, and those have been submitted and noted to have been received. At some point, that will include not only a fairly intense tour of the park, but probably some discussion with some collective office of us. So keep an eye out or an ear out that at some point I say, hey, look, the Newmarket folks are coming in. They'd love to chat. It'd be helpful for us to have a couple of the board members and maybe even Brian or others with some institutional knowledge to answer any questions they might have. But I think it's good to be participating in it, and we'll certainly get a good sense of what the suggestion is. No, I think that's, I would note that you continue to see kind of a downtick in website visits. I think our updating that will help that somewhat. For some reason, the year-to-date March figures are off the chart, so I don't know what really happened in March, but you'll see a significant turnaround in that. So the real work that we've got to do today is you also have in your packet kind of the items included in the Paris that are reviewed at the March meeting. Of the various reports, Mark had set up, which I think works fine, kind of items that are approved and kind of reviewed as part of our January reorg meeting, think org charts, board members, committees, and a few other policies that are reviewed and signed off at different times. I'm only including those items that, as Mark set it up, had the March board meeting for approval. So let me just kind of walk you through those at a high level. The first is our 2009. Remember, everything that's going into Paris, oddly enough, with the exception of our 2020 meeting dates and our 2020 budget, is all 2019 focused. So this is our 2019 annual report. I would note that probably page 2 is more interesting to you. I think the only item that I would say is a push at this point under the retail side is that Popeyes, that they obviously have not begun construction yet, and obviously that investment hasn't been made, although there's a commitment that it will be made. More importantly for us, under us, you've got the Yahoo BF 2.2 Waterhouse water jet and custom laser listed. But the good news is that, you know, we set both investment goals and job-created goals, and those were certainly on the investment side significantly surpassed with the Yahoo project. And then the good news is the jobs created, and again, the Popeyes is a bit of a push, but I'm not super concentrated on retail, show sort of exceeding those goals. Second one is the assessment of projects. For most of us, that's really just our jobs report, but in Paris, it's referred to as assessment of jobs. I would just highlight, not that it's going to be new to any of you, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, that you know, the challenges, I would say, would be Gooding just being slightly below their number. They had one open position at the time, so they're probably really at 42.5. But we're obviously going to chat a bit about Moly Magnetics. And the other one that's worth noting would be J&R Door, where depending on whether you're looking at the 85% figure or the 16, for another reason, Brian and I was looking the other day, and it is an 8 retained and 8 gained. They have 1 or 2 open positions right now, but the only good news there is you note that given the newness of that pilot, they're really not obligated to reach that 16 until 3/19/2021. So I would consider that to be sort of on our watch. And certainly when we chat about the Moly discussions, we can let you know that that somewhat included J&R Door as well. But that's the assessment of projects. The next one, which is a total Paris-driven report, is this assessment effectiveness of internal controls. I would argue with you that the management letter that we just reviewed from the auditors is really your ultimate kind of measure of effectiveness of our internal controls, and obviously that was a, quote, clean management letter with only recommendations and no deficiencies. The one thing I would point out to you on page 2 here is item 4. There is an obligation obviously, we do this all the time, that the IDA Board of Directors will review all projects thoroughly prior to approval, but more importantly, after approval, all the projects can be monitored at least annually. In this case, I felt it was important to simply add that paragraph under corrective actions that, quote, "One business, Moline Magnetics, has been determined to have missed its job numbers by a significant degree. As of 10/29/19, Moline was to have 54 jobs. The 2019 report showed 34 jobs with 4 full-time positions open. Given that 37 jobs are well below the 54 target, the town of Lockport IDA has begun to follow the process called for in its policy for recapture, termination, and modification of financial systems." It's the only note I've made. The other thing about, hey, the process includes, was a pre-existing restatement of that policy. But if anybody really wants to try and give us a hard time, we have obviously referenced that in documents that they'll see, and they'll obviously see it in the jobs piece as well. So you've got the annual report. We will, in a few minutes, for those of you that were not at the audit committee, show you the management letter. You've seen the assessment of projects. You've seen that assessment of poly effectiveness. So the only piece that was not available today in a format that I felt presenting to you was our report card. It doesn't per se make it into Paris, but some of the very important pilot, taxes paid, sales tax paid, cumulative, a lot of those figures, quote unquote, come right off the report card. And we had a meeting with Mark yesterday just to clarify a handful of some remaining math. So I will send you the report card next week when it's done. I will make a note to put it on the agenda for April as well, because it really is our kind of key monitoring document, and I want to give you guys a chance to raise any concerns you have. But that's all we have at this point. I think it'd be good to get a motion on those, just so that we show the board really did review those.
When do you file that report, Tom?
April 1st.
Okay, so we do a motion. I think what we've done in the past years has been a motion to approve the various submissions as part of the parish report and authorize Tom to file that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's get a motion to approve these reports as presented by our director.
Second.
A motion by Darrell, seconded by Bob. All in favor? Aye.
No, I think that's all I had. When we get down to new business, I've got some things. I do have 2 items for executive session, but
Okay. Attorney's report?
I don't think we have anything to report. I think there was a matter that Tom wanted to discuss in executive session for a consultation.
Okay, sounds good. Is there any old business?
that really would have been the bank interest that Bob talked about, but what else?
I'm sorry, I did have one. I committed last week to going through the investment policy
Oh, yeah.
and updating it. And other than eliminating First Niagara Bank, there is a statement I would like to add to Section 7 regarding the institutions we use. In keeping with the overall goals of the agency, it is policy that monies be preferably deposited in institutions that have a physical presence in the town or city of Lockport, New York. That one sentence to Section 7 about the organizations we use. And if everybody's okay, I don't know if we need a
It
motion.
would be helpful because the investment policy certainly has one item, A, uploaded to Paris, but B, it is one of the publicly available policies on our website, so.
So can I make a motion to
Sure.
make that change?
Okay.
I make the motion to make that change.
I second.
All right, we have a motion by Bob to amend the investment policy, section, what was it, Section 7?
Section 7.
And a second by Janine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Bob. And new business.
Yeah, we can do that now. I do think, and I don't want to speak for those of you that were also present, but you have in front of you 3 key documents. One would be the management letter, as I referenced earlier. This is pretty similar to last year's. Really, in that one recommendation is asking that all the policies and practices that we already do follow vis-a-vis both the bank statements, the vouchers and so on are all doubly reviewed, so that's a fairly clean scenario. You also have the required communication with those charged with governance. There's nothing, it's all boilerplate language. They didn't have any audit adjustments or changes there, and there certainly weren't any disagreements. And then you have the actual financial statements. We were really through the whole presentation in 10 or 15 minutes this morning, because I think it is such a straightforward presentation, but I think most notable for the board that it's obviously a clean, unmodified opinion. But again, the management letter, the one-page letter that shows that they followed the government accounting standards and financial statements do get uploaded to Paris and our website, so I think those would be good to get board approval as well. But anybody else that was at the audit committee, if you got other items to add?
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. You know, as Tom said, we had a clean report. Some notable things on the report, the 2019 projects that we had were Yahoo, Custom Laser, and Waterhouse. So 2019 was a much stronger year than 2018. You know, the committee was Darlene, Harry, and myself, with Tom and Mary from Lumsden and McCormick. A couple other things, you know, we do have some money earmarked for pending litigation. So that was a large notable item in the financial statements. Long-term debt for 2020, she had mentioned that that debt will be paid off in 2020. So I thought that was something of note. And I think that's about it. And then also, I guess, the way that we've structured the contract with Yahoo, there will be approximately $50,000 or $54,000 coming in per year for 5 years, as far as like continued revenue over the next couple of years. I don't know if anyone else has any comments.
Pretty much covers it.
Okay. So let's get a motion to accept the external audit by Lumsden McCormick.
So moved.
By Harry,
Second.
seconded by Darlene. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Correct. Next item I do need a motion on as well is, I think I mentioned before, the New York State Economic Development Council, in addition to their 2 annual meetings, one must be just sort of a conference, the other one is an annual meeting. I have registered for the Otisauga Cooperstown one, but that's not until May, and I don't yet know all the related fees. But at least for this year, I do want to attend what they refer to as the IDA Academy. They hold it twice a year. It's a one-day program targeted to newer executive directors and related, you know, economic development staff. If we were large enough, like an ECIDA, to have a compliance officer, it'd be appropriate for, you know, them to attend this as well. Lucky me, it's all the way down in SUNY New Paltz outside of Poughkeepsie. But the good news is it's super reasonable. It's $85 fee. The Hampton Inn I've booked is $104, and then it obviously be mileage. But I think because of that expenditure and so on, we should have a motion. I would just mention real quickly, as I look at the agenda, it's, surprise, probably 60% compliance. The irony is it'll be 22 days after Paris had to be submitted, so I don't know how much help it will necessarily be, maybe for next year.
For next year.
And the other 40%, which I do look more forward to, is some good kind of IDA best practices, and not in the realm of compliance, but, you know, be it marketing, website, be it, you know, supporting your induced businesses and so on, so.
So Tom, what is the approximate cost for this IDA
That's a
Academy?
good question. I mean, it certainly wouldn't, I didn't do the mileage piece. I frankly didn't dare look to see how much. I mean, when I did Albany, was it a couple $100 in mileage? I mean, I think.
Albany's like $280 in mileage.
Okay. So, I mean, it certainly wouldn't exceed $500 for sure.
Okay.
If you want to do it that way, maybe.
Sure. All right, so if we can get a motion to approve the IDA Academy for Tom, approximately $500 for a one-day and a one overnight.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have moved by Janine and seconded by Bob. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
And I mentioned earlier, it would have been premature to present the report card, so I'll deliver it to your email or electronically next week, and I will have it on the agenda for the following meeting.
Okay, you'd like to move into executive? We have a motion to move into the executive session.
So moved.
So moved by
For the-
Darlene.
Specify for the purpose of consulting with the attorney.
Okay, let's have a motion to move into the executive session for the purposes of consulting with our attorney. We have a motion by Darlene, second
I'll second it.
by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion by Darlene,
I'll second.
second by Janine. All in favor? Aye. All right, we are back from executive session. Our next meeting is Thursday, April 9th. Please let Tom know ahead of time if you can't make it. Hopefully, we have the email situation
Yeah, no, it is.
resolved. And,
Is Todd the only one with the Yahoo address? Email address? I
Yahoo
think so.
address? Email address?
No.
Okay, because my Yahoo email address filters and throws it in spam every time.
We have the same problem
I
at the
keep-
library when they notify people, and the Yahoo is terrible.
Okay.
The messages
Is the
don't get
library
through.
one Lockport?
When the library is sending messages to the patrons, if they have Yahoo
Right.
addresses, they don't
Yeah,
get
I
them.
just don't get any of that.
I mean, I did reach out to Paul coincidentally, because I had met with him, recently on the more substantive induced things, but, hey, I know that Dan, I think there was two that we were dealing with, and, kind of shared that with him, but I haven't heard back from him yet, but kind of the irony of irony, right?
It is, yeah.
It
Their
is.
corporate structure is vast, that's all I can say.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strong filter. All right, so it's 8:46, we'll have a motion to end the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bob,
Second.
seconded by Janine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, I've moved it out of junk,
Yeah.
I've marked